Right, I think we've given everyone a pretty good chance. We'll get underway. Ladies and gentlemen, if you wouldn't mind just turning your cell phones to silent. Tēnā koutou katoa, and good evening. My name is Greg Hall, and on behalf of Lynn Dawson, Chair of Devonport Library Associates, it is my pleasure, along with my colleague Kerry Chamberlain, to introduce Our Devonport, a presentation in Pecha Kucha format. This is a rerun by popular demand of the event held on 30th of April at the Devonport RSA. And it looks as though you've turned out in droves to support this one, so thank you very much. At the conclusion of the presentation, there will be an interval followed by a short film by Margot McRae, The Vic, A Love Story. In about 2 minutes or so, Kerry will explain what Pecha Kucha is all about. And as with the 30 April event, all proceeds from tonight will go to the Victoria Theatre Trust. On the screen behind me, you'll see a photograph of Paul Beachman walking with the Beachman's wee Scotty Bertie. Paul passed away last Friday morning in the Harbour Hospice in Takapuna. He has been a long-time Devonportian, a long-time member and past chair of the DLA, and an energetic and creative committee member. He was a dedicated high school teacher, and on a personal note, as well as being a good friend, he was also in a past life one of my teachers at Westlake Boys High in 1965. Our love and best wishes go to Bernice and all of Paul's family and friends. And we dedicate tonight's event to Paul Beachman. When Kerry and I started the planning for this event late last year, we did so in the knowledge that Devonport was rich in talented and interesting people, and that this format would be an ideal way to showcase our place through their eyes, or for them to tell us about themselves and their art or calling, perhaps in some cases both. Because our Devonport is not just about Devonport the place, but also, and most importantly, Devonport the people. I will introduce each presenter to you as we proceed through the evening, and tonight we are going to traverse the origins of Devonport through archaeology, and we will conclude with a possible future for our place through architecture. Along the way, our presenters take us on their own Devonport journey through the varied lenses of heritage, photography and poetry, sculpture, the community art scene of the 80s, and a forthcoming documentary. And all of this in the Pecha Kucha format, which Kerry is about to explain to us.
Thanks, Greg. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming along tonight. I'm assuming there's people in the audience who don't understand Pecha Kucha that much, so I'm explaining what that is. It's a presentation device that was created by two architects in Tokyo many years ago, and it has a particular format which we're following tonight. It's a Japanese term Pecha Kucha, which means chit-chat, and I think if you were in Japan you'd say Pechacha, saying it really quickly. We ask our presenters tonight to do something quite difficult. Not to balance an elephant, but they have been asked to provide 20 slides of various informative content, and each slide is on the screen for 20 seconds. So every presentation tonight is precisely timed, and each speaker has 6 minutes 40 seconds to present to you. That's all. And they put up interesting images. There may even be some of Devonport if we're lucky. And each slide will start with the title of the presentation and the name of the presenter. Then they will show their slides, their 20 slides. I like this one because it's from the Devonport Library Associates after all. And then when their 6 minutes 40 seconds is up, under no control of their own, this slide will appear signalling they've reached the end, and they'll be obliged to sit down and let the next presenter talk. So that's the Picture Coocher format, 20 by 20 and 6 minutes 40 in total. So if one of the presentations is not grabbing your attention, don't worry, in 6 minutes 40 a new one will. And I forgot to say, there is no space for questions from the audience, sorry. It's a presentation format and you will hear lots of interesting things as we go by. Oh, keep pressing too many buttons. Thank you.
David Vert is our lucky number one. David has worked as an archaeologist and historian for over 40 years. He is also an author and has published books on the history of cookery, an award-winning children's book on archaeology, a history of toys in New Zealand, and chapters for a book on the engineering history of Auckland. David Vert.
Kia ora tātou. I'm a bit of a cripple tonight, I'm sorry. Hang that up. Okay, I am an archaeologist, so what I'm talking about is largely archaeological, and I'd just like to acknowledge quickly Dr. Matt Campbell and Micah Plowman, who are the archaeologists who I've burgled quite a deal of material to get through tonight. And I'd also just like to acknowledge a couple of people I worked with earlier in my career who are now past. Hariata Gordon from who I worked with lots of local stuff here, Ngāti Paua, and Morris Wilson from the south of the city, from Te Waiahua. So let's go, see if we can do it again. Man, find spacebar. About 800 years ago, the double-hulled Waka Horua set off from Hawaii heading for Aotearoa. On board were families, plants, tools and songs. And one of the first places they reached was Te Hokapua, Torpedo Bay in Devonport, a sheltered location with fresh water, the spring Takapuna. When the new Navy Museum was being developed, they brought in the archaeologists to have a look and see what sort of military stuff was lying around, but what they found was something much more interesting, in my opinion. Under the asphalt of the car park, there was evidence of the first people of Tamaki Makaurau, right here in Devonport. What they found was a sequence of hangi, one on top of another. People have been cooking here for hundreds of years, because right at the bottom, under a layer of red soil washed down from Maunga Wika, was the oldest hangi, and in it there were moa bones. Moa remains are the marker of early sites in Aotearoa, because by the mid-1400s moa are extinct. Moa were the giant canaries in the coal mine that was the pre-human New Zealand ecosystem. And the moa cooked here were cooked in about 1350, right within the first century of human settlement of Aotearoa. The people living here were eating from the bulging larder of 14th century Aotearoa, bush birds, seabirds, and there was a local seal colony. The leftovers were fed to the kuri, and they were eaten later. And in a familiar feature of Devonport, the site was covered with coprolites, old dog poop. The other things they found was that tamare, snapper, were being dried and smoked, and there were small fires with racks for drying the fish, and the only bones on site were the heads, because they were the bits that were left over, and the rest of the fish was eaten elsewhere or perhaps traded for things that you needed. Where you find fish hooks, and because you're in archaeology, they're almost always broken and rejected. And these ones here were made out of Cook's turban shells, with special hook designed to rotate in the fish's mouth, trapping it, and they were making them here. There are also stone tools. There's that nice stone fishing sinker we can see there, and an absolutely beautiful adze, and you can see the shining polished blade, lautoki, and the rougher butt end where it was lashed onto its handle. It's so good it probably was actually hidden by somebody who never came back to find it. The most unusual artefact is actually the slightly charred kauri wood tapa pounder for pounding the bark of the paper mulberry tree that had been brought from Hawaii, and the tree didn't grow very well here, and so the tapa was so valuable it was used as ear ornaments in very tiny little strips. The same early 1350 date is all the way along that inner harbour side of Devonport. This is a hearth from under the Masonic Hotel, and there are other early dates that came out of a cable trench by the library. So there's people living all the way along this coastline right from the very beginning of human settlement. Another good thing that Devonport offered is the warm, fertile volcanic soil. And here in this early photograph on the slopes of Mongaweka, we can see the low stone alignments and walls that Maori gardeners built when they were clearing the stone out of the rocky volcanic soil. There are more stone walls we can see here right in the middle of the picture, and I have this overwhelming urge to point, but it won't make much difference to you. You can see in the middle there's the stone alignments, the stone enclosures, also signs of Maori gardening, and that was all over this area at that time. There's another set of early boundaries, and there's one here rather ineptly marked by me, and these were radial boundaries that ran out like spokes of a wheel from the cones, and this one's coming off Mount Cambria, Takararo, and crossing Albert Road and running down to what would have been the mangroves at the time, and I presume there are others. From about 1500, however, population increased, the seal population had disappeared, and population pressure led to people needing to build defended sites to live on, and the past sites in Devonport are the ones on Takarunga, and you can still see the terraces and Kumra pits, the Rua Kumra up there, and also Mongaweka. Now it's a bit odd, this one, because you can't see much in the way of Maori earthworks, but having worked up there for a number of years, I realised that it's actually on the other side. It's on the side that these photographs don't show. There are remnants of terraces, and you get bits of obsidian coming up. Now, the Maori settlement continued in this area, and it's the really interesting description of it from von Hochstetter, who was an Austrian geologist who was here in the late 1850s. And he was employed by the New Zealand government to make a survey of the geology of the whole of Tamaki Makaurau. And here's this amazing map. And he came over and he walked from Mongaweka North Head all the way to Pupuki Moana, to Lake Pupuki. And he was rowed across the harbour by the Maori ferry people, who ferried people back and forth. And we can see here in this image from Harriet Abraham in the 1850s what Devonport looked like then. You can see down just in the lee of Mongaweka, the site where the Maori village that he visited was. And the interesting thing was he stayed there and they fed him. And he tells this wonderful story of the guys going out and picking up big boulders out of Torpedo Bay covered with oysters, dropping the rock in the fire, heating it up, and pop, and he was hooking the oysters out with a pointed stick. And he says oysters a la Maori were delicious. This, however, the settlement and this continuity ended in 1863, and this is the proclamation from Governor Grey telling the Maori of South Auckland, but listened to by people everywhere, to sign up an allegiance to the Crown or leave. And the people at Te Hokapua left, and they left at night, and no one saw them go.
And no one saw Dave Vert go, but I assure you he went.
Having stared into that light, I'm completely blind, so you're lucky to end up with me on your lap.
Thank you very much, David. That was great. I'd now like to introduce Devonport Heritage. Devonport Heritage 2017 Inc. is a community group originally formed in 1994 to celebrate and encourage heritage protection in Devonport. The Society's role is to promote awareness and appreciation of Devonport's rich history and act as a lobby group for heritage restoration. In a statement from Devonport Heritage, they say, "We are not arguing against development. We are asking developers to support historic values and scale in their design of buildings in historic and character areas. Every major city in the world protects its unique old areas. Why shouldn't this happen in New Zealand?" Now, who are Devonport Heritage? Our next presenters are the Starsky and Hutch of heritage. They are the Cagney and Lacey to heritage crime. They are, first of all, Margot McRae. Margot has lived in Devonport for 42 years. After a long career in journalism and documentary making, she wrote the play Finding Murdoch, which had 2 professional productions in Auckland and Wellington. She co-chairs Devonport Heritage and the Victoria Theatre Trust and was awarded a Queen's Service Medal in 2017 for services to heritage. Her right-hand person, left-hand person, I'm not sure who's the right-hand one, Trish Deans, has lived in Devonport for 30 years. She has raised a family and balanced her challenging role as assistant principal of Kelston Girls College. During this time, she became a founding member of Devonport Heritage and co-chair for many years. As deputy chair for the Auckland Civic Trust and a committee member of the Auckland Character Coalition, Trish seeks to strengthen the heritage protection rules throughout our endangered inner city historic areas. Margot and Trish.
We seem 2 nice ladies from a leafy suburb, but we are walking in the footsteps of these great Devonport activists from the 1970s. They stopped the Ngātaringa Marina, created the first nuclear-free zone, started the first commercial recycling depot in New Zealand, and we are fighting for Devonport's historic buildings.
The fight to stop the demolition of 39 Church Street, an early villa known as Old Joe's, was one of our great battles and a test case for the new heritage protection rules. We won the battle despite it being badly dilapidated, but we lost the war when it was mysteriously burnt down.
One of our best weapons is using strong phrases to get media attention. Demolition by stealth described how a house owner who was refused demolition consent just took the building apart anyway. This waterfront house was a major loss for preserving genuine heritage houses and led to a strengthening of the council rules.
Another battle, another major Herald story and headline, demolition by neglect. But this time we won the fight to preserve the 1885 castle, a B-listed house. The owner wanted to demolish the house and create a Buckingham Palace with a windmill, flagpole and 18-car garage. The Masonic, the 1866 Masonic, Auckland's oldest waterfront hotel, our biggest battle and terrible loss. We submitted against the plan to demolish 90% of the Masonic for apartments. When council approved it, we appealed to the Environment Court, engaged a barrister, a planner, and began fundraising.
Despite Heritage New Zealand joining the case and huge community support, we lost the appeal. Work began despite significant archaeological finds at the site. It divided the community when it was built, with some saying the replacement was lovely. For us, it is a poor replica with virtually nothing of the original building left.
The developer sued us for court costs of $23,000. 6 years later, debt collectors were trying to still find Margot and myself and where we lived. But Devonport Heritage only had $250 in the bank. We were liquidated. After much public support, we reformed and renamed ourselves Devonport Heritage 2017.
But the Vic was a win. It's been a Devonport icon since 1912 and is the country's oldest cinema. By the 1980s, it was in serious decline and looked like being turned into apartments. But the first of several Save the Vic movements started, and that's the key to its survival, a community that would not give up on it. We joined the battle that persuaded North Shore City Council to buy the building in 2006. The Victoria Theatre Trust won the lease, raised $86,000 and opened the Vic in 2010. The Vic has moved from silent movies to the digital age. Saving it has been a huge victory for the Devonport community.
The Navy Museum in Torpedo Bay is a great success, but the Navy wanted to demolish these 1880s loading mine store buildings and replace them with something resembling a huge supermarket, until we persuaded them that destroying history for a museum was not a good look. Victoria Road is the central jewel of Devonport, an almost intact Victorian Edwardian historic street that we continually fight to preserve. Developers used the new Auckland Unitary Plan to weaken the volcanic view shafts and height-sensitive areas that protect the views of our maunga.
They wanted a height limit of 13 metres so that taller buildings could be built in the centre of Devonport. We argue that this would destroy the intrinsic relationship between the village and Takarunga, which is so central to Devonport's identity. The compromise result was that some areas behind the main street can go to 13 metres.
We brought together a high-powered group, including the late Jeremy Salmon, to write a submission asking Council to make Victoria Road an historic heritage area, like other areas in Auckland. The Main Street buildings have some protection, but we believe this Main Street has significant national heritage value and deserves more. Council wanted to downgrade most of Vic Road's historic buildings from Schedule A to B, which would make it easier to alter them. We fought this and finally retained the A rating for the Mays and Devonia buildings, as well as St Paul's Church, 9 Mays Street and Duda House.
In 2022, we began the fight against the government's housing intensification plans that meant 3 dwellings of 3 stories on every house site and higher apartment blocks in main streets. We risked losing the special character areas that have protected our old buildings for 30 years. It was a do-or-die fight.
We believe the beautiful historic streets of Devonport, Grey Lynn and others give the city its unique identity and should be exempt from intensification. We reject the NIMBY label. Every mature world city protects its unique old areas. Why shouldn't this happen in New Zealand?
Just 2 weeks ago, the government withdrew its 3x3 edict for Auckland as long as the council allows higher buildings near rail stations. Our special characters are safe for now, but the government's new RMA is expected to downgrade heritage protection, and we know there are many more battles ahead.
We don't just fight, we also entertain. We've made 5 films celebrating the history of Devonport's houses. Our old buildings hold great stories, and we have featured some fascinating renovations to show that some houses can be brought back from the brink of ruin.
So 9 years ago, the Vic bought new red seats to replace some of the old blue ones we got free from a Hamilton cinema, and some of you are sitting in them. Some of you are sitting in the old blue ones, which we got 15 years ago. So we are raising funds to buy new seats for all the cinemas so the Vic can compete for comfort with the big cinema chains. Now the once glorious Esplanade and our latest battle. Our letters to owner's son, Ahua, calling for urgent maintenance, go unanswered. The Esplanade, the Vic, and all the old buildings in between are an intrinsic part of Devonport's identity. While we're busy looking ahead, they keep us in touch with our past.
Thank you very much, Margot and Trish. Oops. Gary, back. That one? Okay. So that, right.
that one and then those ones again.
Right, slight technical glitch there, folks, but on we go. I'd now like to introduce Tina Franson. Tina is an artist whose works encompass painting, photography and writing. She has lived in Devonport for 55 years, during which time she taught chemistry at Westlake Girls High for 16 years. Tina confesses that during this time all her friends were in the art department, not the science department. She has also been a stage actor with TV and film credits to her name. She was a Devonport Borough Councillor and was involved in the organisation and running of the Devonport Arts Festivals. In 2015, Tina was a finalist in the Wallace Art Awards. Tina Franson.
Good evening. 55 years, 11 times the census, cafe explosion, bank depletion, brand new library, defunct council chambers, population stable. Statistics don't lie, but they don't tell the story of elocution perfect Audrey, barefoot in her hessian sack, bearing bags of coins to the bank to be counted in the lunchtime rush. The constants, the moanga and the beaches. The ledge. There is a ledge high on Moangika, my moanga of inspiration that faces the rising sun. On this ledge, with sky above, sea below, I stand beyond the looping metal chain of go no further, toes curled over the edge, flight ready, arms wide, to embrace the bounty of the sea and the land. A pristine, freewheeling gull, to soar above the minutiae and the mundane into a space in the mind and the soul, a space of freedom and abundance, where anything is possible. Ley lines. 1998, a serious illness, yours, my son. 2002, a marriage, your brother's, a death, yours. 2004, a wedding, mine, a birth, your niece. 2007, another niece. 2014, a serious illness, mine. I have crisscrossed the ley lines between these life events, from moanga to moanga and shore to shore, like a threadbare wandering Sufi, trudging the troughs and peaks of foreign climes in search of the answers to improbable riddles. Now I have achieved not quite enlightenment guaranteed, but contentment, with a little pocket of sadness. You would be proud of me. McHugh's, place of memories, firsts and lasts. As Devonport kiosk a century ago, tea rooms for private parties, changing cubicles, bathing suit and towel, sixpence an hour, lying on the beach in bathers, prohibited. Now as McHugh's, firsts and lasts of family weddings, second son wedding his school days sweetheart, the last time ever the whole family were together. On the writing of poetry, plunge right in, they say, sweat it out, they say, purge it, prune it and sculpt it, they say, then leave it and refine it later, they say. How about the ones created on the hoof, with the sun on your face and the wind at your back, a rhythmic loping creating a blank canvas of the mind, all senses alert, nothing and everything at one and the same time. How lightly these ones fall into the mind, images gently layering the canvas with colours and light and shade. How delicate and perfect they become, requiring only a tweak here and there so the lines hum and some of the words sing gloriously above the chorus. In the end, not all poems are equal and all poets are different. Stories. There's history written in my head of hair, nearly a year's worth. My first chapter for radiation and chemical dosing now lies round my chair in damp black hieroglyphics written on the floor of the hairdressers. I look for a message in the tangle of shapes. Relief comes to mind. Later, out walking high above the sea on my moanga of inspiration, I turn a corner into the wind. My hair lifts and dances with a new story of freedom, and for a moment, carefree. For that moment alone, I am unburdened by following chapters. Girl on a Rock. Whence came you, girl on a rock, you two-dimensional slip of a thing new, with the joy of first footing in a new land? Who made you and placed you, girl on a rock, with your perpetually billowing skirt? In delight I scramble to greet you, newly discovered girl on a rock, in pirouette pose, hair and ribbon flying rigidly upright in all weathers. But alas, our acquaintance is short-lived. Oh, so soon your maker has whisked you away with the unexpected capriciousness of a gust filling the sails of a becalmed yacht. walks of Devonport. There, etched into the glass of a door, the colour of hope and sunshine, a solid, permanent message for those who would cross the threshold both ways. A conundrum, an impossible feat, not unlike Peter Pan stitching his shadow to the soles of his feet. Don't stand in your own way. 2020, the optician's best tick, exceptional visual acuity. We had it once when the world stopped. We held our breath in a silence more deep than a Good Friday morn. Our vision cleared as skies, seas and roads emptied. We saw with such clarity that which binds us together, a collective act of love. Yet when we emerged, how quickly did the cataracts reappear? How quickly did we forget that clarity and allow facile screens of bigotry and partisanship crowd our vision as the cataracts thickened? Have we learnt nothing? Should we just get new glasses and get on with life? Or should we opt for surgery and try and reclaim that exceptional moment in time when the world stopped in 2020? Roger, my neighbour of 42 years, the garden of Takarunga, on his daily work with dog and toe, host of the bunker of world renown, entertaining and performing in that close-quartered room of nostalgia. Quirky and quick-witted, he brought us music unique to our ears. Here's our moanga, here's our folk club, here's Devonport. Roger, my neighbour of 42 years, you are part of all of us who have experienced your wit and humour, your music, your wisdom and your love. Roger, my neighbour of 42 years, I am the richer in experience for having known you, and the sadder for your passing. You will remain always as the legend of Devonport. 55 years, 11 times the census, 4 births, 1 death, 3 marriages, 1 divorce. Statistics don't lie, but they don't tell a story. The story of a boy and his little brother box sliding down our back door moanga. The story of the boy come man who went to visit his friends and never came back. Or the police on the threshold doing their toughest job. Or the despair of his brother and all of those whose lives were ruptured that night. They don't tell the story of love's loss and love anew, or the trust in life that comes when soulmates finally meet. What is a census but the pulse of a nation at a particular time and space? And in this particular space, that pulse remains strong and vibrant. The story continues with gratitude and hope. All journeys begin and end with home. Walking our beaches in Moanga, I've experienced the joys, loves and losses of an ordinary life. I have been at times despairing, consoled, uplifted, calmed and refreshed as I intuitively follow the same path, my ley lines of home.
Tina will have a few copies of her book, Ley Lines of Home, available for sale at the end of the presentation, I think in the intermission between us and the film. From one very talented Devonport artist to another, our very own Helen Pollock. Helen was born in Dunedin but has spent most of her life in Devonport. Exploring her family history has informed much of her work and led to her creating sculptures which have been exhibited in Europe and throughout New Zealand, including, of course, a permanent installation here in Devonport at the Naval Museum in Torpedo Bay. 2 of Helen's well-known works have toured as First World War commemoration art in Belgium and France. One is now permanently installed in the Passchendaele Memorial Museum in Belgium. The other awaits installation at Le Quinois in northern France. In 2017, Helen was awarded an ONZM for services to the community and the arts. Helen Pollock.
Hello. We started? No, just push them. There we go. All of my work is made in my workshop in Fired in Devonport, much of it around the theme of looking back to see my way forward, piecing together traces of my childhood in Dunedin, and particularly of my father who had served in World War I. He died when I was only 9. Surface tension and permeability to assist me in support of my very sick son, a work to increase my access and receptivity to a greater knowing. this photo at Cheltenham Beach. A famous World War I photo of the shell-blasted trees lay on the bedroom floor. My photo of the arms at Cheltenham Beach fell on top of it by chance and created this image. I knew this was to be my work about World War I. It became Falls the Shadow, arms built from the clay from the battlefield of Passchendaele, fused with rough, unprocessed clay from Coromandel, standing in a pool of remembrance. It's permanently installed in the Passchendaele Museum in Belgium. This work reading backwards at Fort Takapuna. We think we know what these things are for. If events hadn't overtaken, where do the pieces fit? What's missing? Here for a greater purpose, or merely misplaced and left? A series of feet sculptures followed, relating to World War I, standing to, other ranks, and bronze medal. They developed over time to 35 pairs of feet, the size of a small platoon. It became Victory Medal, installed in a gun emplacement on Fort Takapuna and mounted on a rusted steel medal. 35 pairs of feet made of rough, unprocessed clay. One pair cast in bronze, a recognised hero. But they were all heroes. It travelled around provincial museums and gardens. And then, as the young men, New Zealand men did in 1917-18, it left New Zealand and crossed the seas for the battlefields of Europe. It received a rapturous welcome in Arras in France, surrounded by Tony McKnight's red discs, and together became known as the Coquelicot de Pays, the peace poppy. It was draped in red silk and dramatically unveiled before the then President Mitterrand, the then President Justin Trudeau, and hundreds of visitors on the centenary of the Battle of Arras, which was April 1917. It crossed the border to Belgium in a gigantic Belgian army truck, installed to commemorate the New Zealanders' significant role in the 1917 Battle of Messines, and the local farmers pitched in to install. The unveiling was attended by the New Zealand Governor-General, Dame Patsy Reddy, and Navy and Army representatives and dignitaries from Messines, Passchendaele and Somme regions, all famous World War I battlefields. It remained in Messines, and just as the young New Zealand soldiers did back in 1916 and 1917, it wintered over for some months, weathering extremes of weather. It was driven to Le Quesnoy in northern France in a gigantic freight truck, squeezing through these narrow streets of northern Europe, and then hand unloaded. I'm just showing it as a sample of the logistics of getting this work around. And it was unloaded by hand again in front of the New Zealand Memorial Museum. The locals pitched in with the installing, and here they're physically weighting the truck to stop it tipping up. It's pretty basic. It was installed here for around a year for the centenary of the taking of Le Quesnoy by the New Zealand Division in November 1918. A proud and personally moving moment for me, because my father served as a signaller in World War I with the New Zealand Division and marched with their final 100-day march across northern France from the Somme to the liberation of Ekenwa in November 1918. He was actually there. In 2015, I was honoured to be invited to create a sculpture for the New Zealand Navy World War I pavilion in Torpedo Bay. This is me here working in my workshop. It's very basic, but it's my most happy place, making the work. And as above, so below, created in bronze, brings together the significant elements of my work: the upstretched arms, the pool of remembrance, and introduces Jacob's ladder. I climbed this old Jacob's ladder when I was 8 with my father in Dunedin. It's now reinstalled in Bethel's Beach. Jacob dreamt of a ladder ascending into heaven. When he awoke, he named the place Bethel, meaning place of God.
Thank you, Helen. It's very poignant to note that the artworks of these two wonderful women artists, Tina and Helen, have been to a large extent informed by family history and by personal adversity, and we are richer for it. Colin McRae. I don't know what to say about Colin McRae because he disagrees with everything. He's a self-confessed handsome fellow and drinks only the finest Scotch whisky. However, one of those statements is not true. Colin actually only drinks beer. Colin worked for 50 years in radio and television, reporting and producing news, current affairs, sports programs and documentaries for TVNZ, TV3 and Māori TV. He and Margot have lived in Devonport for 42 years, where they have raised 3 sons. 2 of their 5 grandchildren play for the North Shore Rugby and Cricket clubs. Colin McRae.
Shouldn't take long.
Don't trip over there, Colin.
Just to clarify, a second time, I don't drink whiskey, but I have discovered gin in recent years. And while it was once known as Mother's Ruin, there's no mention of a father on the label, so I'm making progress there. Now I've got to push a space bar, and it goes like this. Kia ora, I'm making a film about our beautiful, leafy Devonport Te Hau Kapua. It has a rich history and a rich contemporary life. My area of interest is within the boundary of the old borough. It'll not be about what Devonport could or should be, but about what it is and how it came to be what it is. Devonport is where Hollywood comes to tell its stories. I'm recording our stories from the world of arts, architecture, sports, education, religion, commerce, the Navy, and portraying some of the characters of our village, past and present. There's no shortage of storytellers, writers, artists, lobbyists, journalists. We love talking. Happily, 1 or 2 of us love listening. We have meetings, we argue, we agitate, debate, wave banners, sign petitions, write letters to the editor. And isn't it great to have an editor to write to? And we never come to blows, except for that time way back in 1909 when a brawl broke out over who had the rights to the domain. Rugby union or rugby league, and not just one brawl but a second a week later up in a council meeting upstairs in what used to be the Masonic. They shared the pitch for a few uneasy decades until league moved off to Bayswater in the 1960s, and we never say no. We say yes to saving Ngātaringa Bay, yes to banning nuclear powered vessels, to protecting heritage buildings, to public access to Fort Takapuna, yes to not amalgamating, and yes to recycling. Yes to no more high-rise buildings. Yes to upgrading takaranga. Yes to embracing Matariki. Yes to protecting the view shafts of our monga. And yes to calling them monga. Yes to the 40-strong Kapahaka group at Devonport Primary School. And yes to this painting by Darnell Louis, a fifth-generation Devonporter. Yes to Benjamin the Cat. But a statue to the only Kiwi to win a Victoria Cross on Gallipoli, Patuoni, Peter Blake, Buck Shelford, Mike Pritchard. Suffragettes casting their first votes. A statue for a Dacre, a Duda, an Alison, a Mays? No. But we do have a statue of a cat. So the film, do we start with the first volcanic eruption or with the arrival of the first settlers who washed up here in the early 1970s looking for cheap housing? We have the scenery, characters, lots of dialogue, of course. As for drama, we have the drama of fact. Filming around town is underway as a labour of love, but we'll need to pay for professional post-production so we can screen it here at the Vic and other cinemas around the country, and pay to produce shorter clips and additional material for the even larger online audience around the world. The film will be owned by Devonport Heritage, an incorporated society, a not-for-profit organisation operating under the laws of the land. This is also a society of volunteers operating under the laws of the jungle. These hard-working busybodies are already busy working hard on the fundraising. So, who will watch? Well, all of Devonport have only to see if they're in it. There are schools, clubs, tourists, heritage festivals, history buffs, businesses, and that most crucial demographic, the general public. And all these audiences are self-regenerating. The film will inform, educate and entertain. It'll help stimulate curiosity and, who knows, business for the town. It might even explain to Wellington politicians what we're all about. Mr. Bishop, we don't want any Lego houses replacing heritage houses. Now, speaking of Lego, I was asked recently, what would you know about making movies anyway? I said, listen, sunshine, don't be a moron. What sort of a dumb question is that? I said, I've been around so long I once interviewed a survivor of the Titanic. And yes, the band played on. My 50 years of storytelling has been funded mainly by taxpayer bribes. Back in the early 70s, the boss would feed my payslip under the bottom of my typewriter, which I guess makes me one of the original bottom feeders. Every government since the late 70s has been complicit. Bribes paid for me to produce the New Zealand Wars with James Belich, the all-day Anzac Day coverage on Māori television. I travelled the world on bribes, producing a documentary series on the legends of the All Blacks. Bribes allowed me to take Peter Snell and Murray Halberg back to Rome to recall their golden hour. So, this isn't my first rodeo. The bribes saw me producing current affairs programs that questioned 12 consecutive Prime Ministers, starting with Muldoon. They all chipped in, and at the risk of exhibiting relevance deprivation syndrome, let me point out that when Winston was often there, he was chipping in, and that's when he wasn't chipping away. Today I'm learning more about my hometown. Do you know which two Prime Ministers were married at the Holy Trinity Church? Why do we have so many lawyers but not a single police officer? Why do we have so many op shops but no banks? So, what's the major theme? I like to think it's our deep roots giving us social cohesion and interconnectedness. For example, landscape painter Charles Bradley, he takes us from the military to our natural environment, to archaeology, to boat building, to sport, to commerce, to religion, and somehow takes us back to the military. Then there's a little girl, a fifth generation, soon to play for our football club. Her grandfather won the Chatham Cup. Her great-grandfather played football for New Zealand. Her great-great-grandfather played football for the club and rugby for the All Blacks. Her uncle, the fourth generation to play, is a local artist and musician. So call me arrogant, wokester loser, but I believe Devonport is a rich tapestry with stories worth telling. But movies cost money, and it turns out bribes are not entitlements. and I've long since had my water cut off. So when the busybodies come knocking, please once again say yes and chip in.
Thank you, Colin. Comedian, he can add comedian to his extensive resume. And promoter. I would now like to introduce Linda Blinko and Lynn Lawton. Lynn and Linda are the proprietors of the Satellite 2 Gallery, and prior to that were for many years running the Depot Art Space. They also have an art gallery in Rawene and are the proud owners of a church property also in Rawene, in which artists and writers can be supported in a dedicated residency in great comfort, I might add, while they work on specific projects. I have a personal statement here from each of Linda and Lynn. First from Linda. Over years of change, Devonport's community spirit remains strong thanks to committed advocates and activists. Linda Blinko counts herself fortunate to have worked with some legends, including Ruth Coombs, Lindsay Brock, Carolyn Poulter, Kuini Karanui and Trish Joggin to support disaffiliated young people, develop a women's resource network, relocate the community house and establish Depot Art Space. Lynn Lawton says, over my life, some essential guiding values have sustained me in the mahi I undertake and the connections I develop with people and the world around me. I work with commitment, honesty and transparency, and with the belief that considered service is fundamental to a thriving community. In this context, I love to support others to realise their dreams and their potential through the kete of life and professional skills I'm continually developing. Linda and Lynn, thank you.
Thank you, and I'd just like to acknowledge that the copy and all the research on the photographs in this presentation were undertaken by Linda. And as you walked in tonight and as you walk out, you may notice in the foyer area a beautiful painting of the Vic, and that was created by Martin Law. He is an artist whose work we're exhibiting at Satellite Gallery at the moment, as we also focus on our Devonport in our exhibitions this month. Our tour of Devonport creative landscape in the 1980s begins on the summit of Takaranga at the Bunker, Auckland's oldest surviving folk music club, established by folk singer and Devonport icon Roger Giles, who for nearly 50 years was a virtual godfather of the Auckland folk music scene. Roger and his life partner Hilary Condon were the folk who made folk music work in the city. Roger was also known for his dedication to the care of the environment, a familiar figure on the manga picking up rubbish. Thank you, Roger and Hilary. The Devonport Community House on the slopes of Takaranga was a creative hub with a range of classes run by colourful local characters. Carolyn Sewell's gorgeous, garrulous mother, Babe Matthias, ruled over the leisure painters. Meryl Woodhams took life drawing classes, and Marilyn Tweedy taught art to children. Shirley Thomas, Jan Mason's mother, took music appreciation. The community house also ran workshops in the clay store, and one was a pottery class by DLA's very own Sue Ann Lorimer. And in 1986, the clay store became a community workshop manned by volunteer retired tradesmen, and for the past 37 years available to the local community. Then top of the Vic Road were the two cinemas, the Vic and the State. The Vic, built in 1912, survived fire, multiple owners in the 1980s, Charlie Gray, and today is still thriving thanks to the vision and relentless work of the Victoria Theatre Trust and theatre operator Philip Jaser. However, not so fortunate across the road, the State, lost to undeterred property development in 1995. And just days after the State's demolition, unfortunately, the law changed to protect heritage buildings. Unfortunately, too late for the State. Then further down Victoria Road was a cluster of creative enterprises, now long gone. The first was Compendium Craft Gallery, and this was established by Pamela Elliott in the building now occupied by the Manuka Cafe. We then cross over Clarence Street to Moonbird Jewelers, where Douglas Seabold sold his exquisite silver and gold jewellery and ran night classes with people attending from across the wide Auckland area. Douglas grew up in Argentina and trained as a jeweller in Germany, opened shops in Ibiza, France and England before moving to Devonport. And further down the road was the very first Flagstaff Gallery, a serious dealer gallery owned and run by Garth Jenkins, showcasing and supporting Devonport artists and also nationally recognised artists like Julia Henderson, Stanley Palmer, who lived locally at that time. And down on the corner, the Esplanade Hotel, now a tragic shadow its former glorious self, was part of a swinging music scene where local rockers and musos entertained gatherings of, do you remember this, Widgies and Bodgies, who by day frequented Dyer's Milk Bar, yes, just a few doors up north. A frequent performer at the Esplanade was also a local legend, Gary Harvey. Now, Gary's been performing in Devonport since the age of 15, when he was asked to play bass for a local band, the Cavemen, one of the very first bands to come out of Devonport. And Gary now lives down in Tauranga, but sometimes returns to Devonport. Further along King Edward Parade, the iconic, much-loved Masonic Tavern, and memorable Boyd Thwaites. They pumped out some serious sounds back in the 1980s, and in more recent days was home to local bands like the Chicks, Whitebirds, and Lemons. No doubt many of us have been there many nights and been entertained by those bands. The Masonic, now also a fallen hero, as the developers moved in to replace an icon with a complex of replica heritage apartments, burying in the process some significant Māori tonga. We cross over the road from the Masonic to the Works. This was New Zealand's very first working craft collective, established in 1979 by Borough Councillor and planer Mike Pritchard, and also local glass artist Peter Rayos and potters Andy and Camel Hegan, amongst a number of other creatives. Peter Wiesnick and Peter Rayos set up the Hot Glass Company. They both used ancient methods for making glass dating right back to 2000 BC. Unfortunately, the works closed in 1990 at the end of the lease of the property. But Peter Rayos continues to this very day in Devonport with his gallery on Queen's Parade. Back to the nub of Vic Road with the previous Devonport Library demolished in 2013, which housed 18 terracotta tiles made by potter Barry Brickell. These tiles were reinstalled in the new library in 2014, commemorating Devonport's past passenger and car ferry services. Duda's Brickworks at Nauranga Bay, on the site now occupied by Ryman's, was a frequent haunt of Barry's. Fascinated by fire and kilns, it wasn't long before his hands began working with clay. In more recent years, a frequent resident at Michael King's Writer Centre and exhibitor at the Depot Art Space. We are finishing our tour at 3 Victoria Road, home of the Devonport Borough Council until Devonport's forced transition in 1989 from an identifiable arts village to a less visible part of the North Shore city. In 2023, the former council's crest was finally removed by Richard Tong. Richard was a former deputy manager of the council. He made the crest after leaving his position in 1984. The council had agreed the plaque would be returned to Tong post-amalgamation, thus marking the end of an era. Finally, our snapshot of Devonport's creative landscape circa 1980 ends with the question posed by Metro in 1989. Perhaps this is a perennial question asked at some time by each of us making Devonport our home.
It will be addressed in some respects by our final two presenters, Julie Stout and Ken Davis, who are exceptionally well qualified to deliver this last presentation. Both Julie and Ken are Devonport residents, architects with strong resumes and teachers. Julie is an urban design advocate and professional teaching fellow at the University of Auckland School of Architecture. Ken is a former principal architect at Kāinga Ora and a visiting university teacher and architecture advocate and activist. They have received prestigious awards from Te Kāhui Whaihanga New Zealand Institute of Architects. As well as being a distinguished fellow of the Institute, Julie was awarded the Institute's highest accolade, the Gold Medal, in 2021, becoming the first woman to receive this honour. And in 2023, Ken was awarded the President's Award for Built Heritage Advocacy and Advancing Public Housing in New Zealand. Both have a long list of successful projects to their name, including, in Julie's case, Te Uru Waitakere Contemporary Gallery and Lockdale House Upgrade Titirangi, the Tauranga Art Gallery and Mitchell Stout House Narrow Neck, while Ken was lead architect for the Torpedo Bay Navy Museum and the new Newmarket Railway Station, and when at Athfield Architects was involved in the Wellington Public Library and Civic Centre. Julie and Ken, thank you.
Lovely. Thank you for that fulsome introduction, Greg. And I have to say it's very humbling to be here with such company and also to be so aware of our heritage of Devonport and the part that we all have to play in it. So thank you for having us here tonight. Firstly, we'd like to acknowledge all of the people who've come here before us, especially the many iwi who call Tamaki Makaurau their home. Though we're architects, I also think, Though we're architects, Ken and I are urbanists. What's an urbanist, you might ask? An urbanist is someone who studies how to create good cities, who asks how we might live well in an increasingly urban environment, and in a world increasingly having to deal with the huge issues of climate change, increasing population, and sustainability of life. Ken and I have been running the Devonport Tomorrow Studio 4 times now with the University of Auckland's Masters of Architecture students. It is they who hold the future. Our job as teachers is to engage them in how to appreciate heritage and work with it, integrate it, and make new buildings fit for purpose.
Devonport is zoned as a town centre, but really to us it's a village, and that has great charm. A village is a lovely thing. It implies a community of people. We all know each other, well, almost, but also a fundamental close connection to the place we all share and care about. It is a continuing pleasure to keep learning new ways of seeing history in place. Who has lived here and why in this area around Te Hau Kapua, Devonport. People have been so generous, a special acknowledgement to the late Jeremy Salmon for sharing his knowledge and enthusiastic passion with us over the years.
We've also been blessed to share time with Peter Ture of Ngāti Taiki Tamaki and Ngāti Paoa descent. Standing on the top of Takaronga, listening to Peter's oratory is to feel time collapse and the whenua come alive with taniwha, energy, and most importantly, people. Tangata whenua, those who lived all around the harbour edge. And with our own taonga here tonight, Dave Vert, talking of the social settlement of this place, the farmlands established, the Navy base setting up in the lee of Stanley Point, the harbour a hive of activity, and Devonport a busy hub only to slide and become a feisty backwater after the harbour bridge was built. Today we're blessed to still have our treasured main street and row of heritage buildings which distinguishes Devonport. As we heard earlier, big thanks to the efforts of so many, especially Margot and Trish. How do we reinforce this asset?
What of the future for Devonport Village, our village centre? Away from the main street, well, how do I put this politely? It's suboptimal. Functional for its time, but increasingly cars dominate, making the place a sea of asphalt. We look at old photos and laugh, but little has changed in 50 years, just more cars. As urbanists, we have to ask, how can we shift that balance and let people and nature have a stronger presence. What are the ways that Devonport can become a thriving village for the future? How do we breathe new life into the village?
What about more places to live, for one? Currently, less than 100 people actually live in the village. We need housing for empty nesters, few here tonight, young professionals, students, local workers, the elderly, so more people can call Devonport their hood, eat out, work, live, without having to drive in and out of Lake Road.
And more places to work. What about other drivers to the local economy, apart from second-hand shops, car repairs and panel beaters? Things like Polytech, university, tertiary education for people to come here for. Build on our local strengths. Creative workshops for all those artists out there. Music studios for performance and recording. Dance and gyms.
And more places for people to hang out, young and old. More seats for the elderly. More public spaces for performances, events. Places to make things, as we heard. And smaller spaces like tiny triumphs. Laneways, courtyards, places to explore and hide. Let's make it a real village.
And places to trap the tourists. More visitor accommodation, hotels, backpackers for the Tiara Trail, all those hungry mouths to channel into the waiting restaurants. If we don't start imagining our future and start shaping it now, others will do it for us. We rightly worry about that change.
And how can we ensure that it is done well? We don't know the answer to this, but we do know it is possible with the right will and working together. Adaptive reuse of buildings, sympathetic and sustainable architecture is a real art, and our heritage buildings offer a tangible base on which to start. Fostering the integration of new into the old, understanding the scale of the human and how to create homes in the village that have privacy, connections and community, make the place feel lived in. And places like Melbourne's Nightingale Housing show us a real exemplar in this field.
Intensification. How can we build higher without disrupting the key views between the Maunga and the Moana? Rather than a blanket height limit, where is height appropriate to lift above the parapet and where is it not to retain views and sun? Sustainability. Integrating greenery into our buildings is one of the great developments of our day. Here is an example of public housing in the Bronx, New York, with sustainability as a key driver. Let places like this inspire us to reconsider how we treat our ecological footprint.
Ecologies and placemaking are all about allowing or making connections, most of all connecting environmentally. How can we weave a green path between Takarunga and the Waitemata so the Wairua place can thrive? We certainly can do better than the current situation. What great opportunities we actually have in front of us.
And over the last 2 decades, our way of perceiving our city has changed dramatically, and I think for the better. Our teachings now include a study of cultural context, the environment and ecologies, building sustainability and adaptability, kaitiaki, to look after, and how we deal with change.
Rose Evans, Te Atiawa and Devonport local, an ethnographic conservator, describes the positive side of change as te wā, the cycle of time, central to the dynamic and innovative nature of Māori kaupapa, incorporating change while retaining the traditional, weaving a new village heart into the broader narrative of te haukapua, Devonport. Thank you. And while we have your attention, we'd just like to say that there is an exhibition of the students' work at the depot, 3 Victoria Road, from the 16th to the 27th of July, and we'd love you all to come and continue the discussion. Plus the depot are hosting a number of public programs, a panel discussion, some lectures, and a film night here at the Vic, we're hoping. So we look forward to seeing you again, and
see you there.
yeah. Long live Devonport.
Thank you very much, Julie and Ken. For those of you who attended the first of of this Pecha Kucha presentation, Our Devonport, at the RSA on the 30th of April, I think you would agree that this is such a huge step up in terms of the whole experience. And when we run Pecha Kucha 2, Kerry, which we will do, having seen the talent and just the community mindedness of the people we approached, we did not get one no from any of the presenters who we approached to join us in these 2 evenings. So we're heartened by that, and I think there are some more Devonport stories to be told. It just remains to me to acknowledge a few people, to thank Philip and the Vic Theatre, to thank very much the DLA committee, including Chair Lynn Dawson, and in particular also Linda Hopkins and David Bailey. I'd also like to thank my good friend Peter Burt, who was responsible for producing the posters that were on screen tonight, and the flyer that went into the Vic Theatre advertising, the banner. Thanks very much, Kerry, whose idea it was to have this Pecha Kucha evening in the first place. To all of the presenters who have done this twice now, thank you very, very much. I think tonight you were far better than you were on the 30th of April. Not that there was anything wrong with what you did on the 30th of April, but just tonight I think was just so much better. Thank you. Finally, we did say that we'd dedicate this evening to Paul Beachman, so I'd just like to finally say to Paul, thank you for everything you have done for us and everything you have meant to us. We salute you and thank you. Kua hina te totara nui. A mighty totara has fallen. There's a short interval now before we will play the film, The Vic, A Love Story. Thank you very much indeed for your attendance.